Hello, my name's Nick Cassenbell. I'm a writer, performer, and storyteller, and I've been working with Nuneaton Museum and people from the local area on a project called Abbey Voices. Everyone in Nuneaton knows the Abbey. It's one of those important places that make up a town. We used the status of the Abbey to access vital personal stories. What we uncovered was the important places to a few people in Nuneaton, those special places that hold stories, memories, and possibilities. Some of them are places that only exist in memory now. Some have taken on new forms or shapes, and some don't exist altogether. But just like the Abbey, they loom large on individuals' lives and are special. You're about to hear the stories, so enjoy them. And whilst you're listening to them, why not think about your special places, your Nuneaton Abbey?
I'm Jenny. I moved to Nuneaton nearly 40 years ago. I moved to Nuneaton when I was 15, halfway through my O-levels. It was hard, not just having to catch up a whole year of a different history syllabus, but leaving behind all my friends. I don't make friends easily. I'm not a very confident person. So fitting into a new school with established cliques and friendship groups was hard. Thankfully, I was too dull to be bullied, but I was lonely. I didn't fit in, and I didn't fit in at home. I didn't do too badly in my O-levels, even got a passing grade in history, and went on to Kegs to do my A-levels. I managed to make friends here, and with them, one Christmas end of term, I went to the Crown. The Crown was probably magnificent in its heyday, a large pub by the station. But when I used to go there in the mid to late 80s, it maybe had a bit of a poor reputation. Or perhaps it was us that had the bad reputation. But we weren't all that bad. We were a mixed bunch, punks and goths and metalheads, and even the odd townie decked out in their best chinos. Landlords came and went. One was a tall ex-policeman who stood behind the bar pulling pints. During the day, he'd serve tea and coffee if you asked, which some of us did, more for our hangovers than ourselves. Sitting on benches illuminated by the sun streaming through the large, grimy windows. At night, though, that's when the Crown was alive. There was a darkness as you walked in the main entrance, almost a gloom, but it was broken up by pockets of light. Behind the bar, above the pool table, the jukebox, the cigarette machine on the far wall next to the toilets. You'd walk over carpet that was dark, beer-stained and beer-scented. It stuck to your shoes in places. The furniture was upholstered in a worn velvet fabric. I remember it being a deep wine red, but perhaps it was patterned, though the pattern would have been faded to background noise by that point. Of course, if you used the other entrance by the other toilets, it was brighter, opening out onto a thin strip of pavement that bordered a busy road. It was here we used to sit and talk and smoke as the world whizzed by. The noise of the pub could be extraordinary. The talking, the singing, the music, the occasional argument, the odd fight. But for the most part, we all robbed along. All enjoyed a pint of Stella or Copperhead cider. We'd play pool, sing along to whatever was on the jukebox. I remember Def Leppard's Animal was popular, as was Rick Astley for some reason. But most of all, we'd have a laugh. We weren't always on best behaviour. There was the time when some people abducted a large cardboard cutout of an aeroplane from Bilberry's that was promoting the Beastie Boys album Licensed to Ill. I don't think they were even really Beastie Boys fans. But we were loyal, and we were forgiving, and we were accepting. And some of us, we were family. The Crown closed down, had its soul ripped out and replaced with pine, and was renamed Lloyd's. Lloyd's closed down, and it became the Crown again. Somehow it wasn't the same. We were all grown up, or at least most of us. Some had passed away. But most of us had married, had children, settled into a life of working and paying the bills. I probably only went once or twice after it reopened, I don't think it was enough, as eventually it closed down again. This time, it's vandals that have ripped out its heart. It'll probably become flats. Convenient for the station, I suppose. The friends I made there 35 years ago, they're still friends. And some are still family. We might not have the crown, but we have our memories. And someone, probably, still has that Beastie Boys aeroplane.
My name's Pam, and I'm an Nuneatonian. Here I stand on Abbey Green facing the Millennium Obelisk, commissioned by the local authority at the time of Abbey Green regeneration. The winning submission referenced the impact of Reginald Stanley and his brickworks on the visual landscape of Abbey District. Anyway, back to the Green. This used to be the site of a bench, usually inhabited by a lady named Ivy. Often the worse for wear. Well, actually, it's more often the worse for wear. To my right is a tea shop, the car park at Abbey Green Infant School. All previously the site of a row of small terraced houses, complete with yards and outside lavatories, known as Stanley Crescent. Listen again. In the house nearest to Abbey Green School, I remember often recalled spending a few very happy years, lived Maria, known as Leah, sister to Bob Cross, and more of them in a moment. Behind me, Aston Road leads up to Jodrell Street in number 124, where my nan lived, and from where she periodically hosted her special teas. I still have a Japanese brooch given to me on one of these occasions by Bessie on her leave on a Christian mission in Japan. I haven't told you, Mother was never happy with me going to the special teas, so I lived it. To my left is Parker's Butchers, established 1896, and located at 33 Abbey Green. This business has now incorporated Bob Cross and his mother's shop at 32 Abbey Green. Bob Cross's shop is where I was tasked to go and get 2 nice jackets made up. Oh, you should have seen the window display. These jackets were for so-and-so, currently residing as a patient in the local Manor Hospital, Malachort Road, almost opposite the Abbey Church in the site of the Abbey ruins. I never knew who so-and-so was, probably because I wasn't listening, but I should have thought I knew more than I know. To the left of Parker's is a carpet shop, the site of which, in a previous lifetime, was situated in the men's hostel, known locally as the workhouse. And to the left of that is a well-being business incorporating my chiropractic practice. The picture created from this mapping transports me back to young Pam, middle school age. Tasked with running an errand to buy the aforementioned jackets. You just imagine the impact of them being pinned in an old-style nightingale wool, especially if you didn't like oranges. I watch her as she goes climbing into the shop. It was only the sound of the old-style manual doorbell, but it was loud. Summoning Bob or his mother from their living room into the front room shop. The door being left open offers an exciting view of a stuffed fox, the stuffed birds and flowers encased in glass domes. His mother dressed from neck to floor in black, fingerless gloves on her hands, and her wispy hair anchored up on her head. Bob, tall and thin with long fingers, also dressed in dark colours and with a kind demeanour. This much appreciated by Pam when entering this fascinating world of Victoriana. Now I know that Bob, after serving in Italy in World War II, was a German prisoner of war in Germany 1941 to the end of the war. Documents still existing and marked Stalag 20A. A letter dated 19th of July 1942 to his mum and dad said, "I don't let anything get me down when my spirits are up." A typical Nuneatonian response of, "Just get on with it." Although in the same letter he did show concern that I should be left all on my own when I come back again. None of this diminishes my vivid recollection of the shop window back then. Perfect fruit, perfectly balanced on plain wooden shelves across the street window. The sight to behold back then to a young girl who saw beauty in so many things. A sight which would be appreciated today as a work of art. All of this has been part of my transformation from a young girl, soaking up life's experiences, bumping into some lovely ordinary people along the way, into a somewhat more mature path, living in a less human environment. However, still bumping into lovely ordinary people, loving creativity, seeking out the unusual and appreciating the impact of human beings one on another. All of these thoughts so famously said by another Nuneaton kid, George Eliot, quoting from the closing lines of Livermore. For the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs.
Hi, my name's Dave and I was born in Nuneaton, and I owe a debt to the Abbey. Without it, I would have been born in Eton or Anchortown, but I was born in Nuneaton. Without it, I wouldn't have experienced those Saturday markets, the street market that still exists to this day. Without it, I would not have attended my sister's wedding at the Abbey Church, although I refused point blank to be a page boy, and I wouldn't have been able to sneak onto the stage at the Cold Pool and trying to play the drums at the reception before I was thrown off and the curtains drawn. I would not experience the joys of playground football, British Bulldog and maypole dancing at Abbey Green C of E School. I'd have never reached my thespian peak when picked to be the innkeeper who gave Mary and Joseph a stable. I was actually promoted from shepherd and allowed to appear in the closing scene. I would never have been in awe of Canon Sinker, who to this day has still got the longest fingers of anybody I've ever seen. I would have not walked in a crocodile from school to church to experience Easter, Christmas, Harvest Festival, and even May Day. I'm not sure if that was a Christian festival, but we had maypole dancing, so that was good enough for me. Anyway, I spent a large part of my early life sitting in the Abbey Church, wondering why it was A, never finished, not realising its history, and B, why it was so cold, although on a hot summer day that could be a relief. But I wasn't christened there. That was at another church on the corner of Stratford Street, now demolished, which later led me to be nicknamed Damien of the Omen fame for you film goers out there. I didn't go to Sunday school there. That was at St John's Methodist next to the Old Rich Cinema. And didn't go to Cubs there. That was Manicourt Baptist Church. Dub, sixpence Arcala. High church was not for my parents. So without knowing it, its history, the stories in the building, the people who came before us all, I was actually influenced by them. And they were real people with stories that resonate today and raise a chuckle. And in some respects, they're so Nuneatonian that perhaps echoing what still goes on in the big wide world at this time. So John o' Gaunt, yes, John o' Gaunt, the man from who launched 1,000 ships and 1,000 royal families, and he was the speaker of that famous Richard II speech, you know, this seat of Mars. Yeah. Anyway, well, John o' Gaunt, he was a successor to the founder of the Priory and was very concerned with its shocking state. And in 1371, he handed its administration over to the Abbot of Leicester and 3 gentlemen. I think I use the word gentlemen advisedly. And later on in that year, he probably added to their troubles by quartering 5 Spanish ladies there from the court. Yeah, from the real court in London. Soon, one lady was actually living in Leicester with a guy called John Elmsall, and the rest ended up saying, we no longer want to live here. That's in Nuneaton. So I hope they never come back anyway. And I won't do that in court. It's actually written in court French, but I won't shame myself and try and speak in court French. Anyway, with the Priory, there were disputes between different areas of the town and the Priory. Perhaps it was local election time. Stockingford was one of those problems. Well, we're not surprised there. And that had been divided in Robert de Beaumont's original gift. And in 1221, the King's Justices at Coventry heard that Hugh de Lilbourne a good old stocking forward name, had raised the level of the pool there to hurt Ida. Ida was the prioress, by the way, and to hurt her tenement. And Hugh counted that Ida had ordered the pool bank, now that's in the name, remember Pool Bank Street, to be cut down again. So he's up, halfway up, halfway down, etc., etc. Hugh was found guilty and ordered to restore the pool to its original level. But Ida didn't escape. Having won, she couldn't help herself. She took the law into her own hands and had to pay damages. And it was like Friday night in Abbey Street. The Priory even fought against the Abbot of Leicester, who later tried to take 60 acres off the Abbey, and the prior actually provided a charter for King John that seemed to declare that in the Abbey's favour. So small town takes on big city and wins. Although I think if they were claiming to use something from King John, they were batting on a sticky wicket, shall we say. Anyway, not satisfied with taking on Stocking Ford in 1447, they took on the Vicar of Nuneaton and the freeholders and tenants concerning rights of pasture in Horston Fields. Now, Horston as an area didn't exist when I was a kid, although it's a very old area, but the Horston Grange is relatively new to us. But it's made a comeback. Anyway, this was an ancient demesne land in open fields, which the Priory enclosed. The aggrieved parties actually took down the fences to gain access for their animals and put their sheep and cows back on there. This time, both parties agreed to arbitration. I think it was over a pint. And the decision in favour of the Priory was actually decided by an 80-year-old local called Roger Mulward, who swore that Horston Fields was indeed the private land of the Priory. And nothing... I never found out if Roger Mulward actually lived to the age of 81 after he made that brave decision to tell Horston Grange it wasn't their land. So anyway, all of these stories of arguments, fights, supporting each other, and sometimes bringing it all together to make it all right in the end, brings to the story, my own personal story. Now, this is a story that I, in fact, knew nothing about until some years later. And it concerns Nuneaton Bath, which Nuneaton people know was an old outdoor pool on the corner of Bath Road, surprisingly, and St Mary's Road. It was always the Bath to us and never ventured to rise to the level of a Lido. I lived just across a little park, as it was known from the Bath. I think it's called something Nuneaton Green Space now, but it'll always be the little park. And like many Nuneaton kids, I learnt to swim there. Just be reminded that even on the hottest of days, one could turn blue from cold due to the temperatures of the water in that pool. And why was it that strange shape? The pool, that is. It used to be part of a sewage facility, but the fun to be had there was limitless. For me, it started at a very tender age, so tender I've got no recollection of it because of one of our family memories. And when it's been regularly used, as a reminder of bribery whenever needed. So my sister was 14 years older than me, and we were both effectively war babies. My sister being born in 1940, just before my dad left for Aden with the RAF. He didn't set foot in England again until 1945. So I had to wait until 1954 and the end of rationing to be born. I think, yeah, and presumably there was some very good letters he must have written at the time as well. So initially, I suppose it was just a pain in the arse to my sister. She'd had the whole of World War II, been doted on by my mum, and then being daddy's little girl at the end of the war. And then I came along to ruin it all. Number one son, Charlie Chan. But perhaps I did have a use. I could be used when my sister wanted to go out and meet friends and boys. Rather than being forced to take me out, she could actually volunteer. And what a daughter, what a daughter. Well, to be honest, I don't know how this particular arrangement was made. But I was taken out in my pram by my sister and her friends. It was a sunny summer day, I assume. We weren't going to waste it on anything else, I don't think. As my sister met up with a friend, and I'm guessing they were members of the old Nuneaton Swimming Club, because there's actually a photograph of them that exists somewhere around here. But perhaps my niece has got it. Anyway, and some of this story was told to me by my sister's friends. Anyway, and none of it adds up, so I don't know what to believe. And anyway, so across Corporation Street we go, and Corporation Street is the scene of my next adventure when I was nearly run over by a Midland Red bus, and a lot of people on that bus got headaches apparently when they hit their heads on the seats in front. Anyway, over the little park, across Central Avenue, up Bath Road, St Mary's Road, into the Baths. Now, I can't tell, as I said, I can't tell the story in the first person, as I was only aware of ensuing events somewhat later on, i.e. when I could walk, talk, and understand and interpret language, and knew when I was being lied to. Were they there for swimming and lovely on the lovely afternoon, or were they, or was I just an awkward appendage who had to be suffered? Now, at one end of the pool, there were diving boards. So they were the strangest diving boards you've ever seen, but they were diving boards. And there was a grassy hill behind it. This was the hill that later on where we laid out our towels when it got to dry off. And then we used to go in the pool to wash the mud and grass and mud off us from there. And several years later, it became a less famous grassy knoll in a different city. And this is where you put your towel down and say, we got warm and dry, you drank your pop, you ate your sweets, and you played tig. This is where my sister and her friend retired to. It was to chat together or to meet boys. I'll leave that open, but I know what I think anyway. I guess I was happy to in my pram, taking in the cacophony of noise coming from the packed pool, as it always was, and the environs. So I was taken to the bank and left in the pram whilst what ensued. Apparently, the brake on my pram was A, faulty, B, not operated correctly. But while my sister and her friends have been questioned on this, again, no straight answer. But they went about their fun, and gravity did what gravity does to a pram with no brakes. It rolled down the hill, across the hard standing, plopped into the pool next to the diving board and drifted across the pool. And I floated across there, looking like Moses or some pharaoh on the Nile. Although I wasn't discovered by any pharaoh, in fact. But anyway, panic ensued, but not for me, as I slept through it all. I don't know who extracted the pram with me in it from the pool, and I don't know if they stayed to actually try and dry the pram off so it looked like nothing had happened whilst they got the story straight. In fact, I don't even know what they told my mum and dad when they returned me home, but the story grew over the years, but it never really changed. The basic premise was my sister let me down. Although it's probably difficult to change, unattended pram rolls into swimming pool without tipping baby out, floats across pool, baby doesn't even wake up, so all's well that ends well story. But once I was told a story, it was using evidence whenever it was required. My sister and me, we disagreed, we fought, we blamed each other for everything. But as we grew older, we ended up becoming very close. And stories like this, instead of breaking us apart, actually brought us together. And that's my little story of Nuneaton.
My first sight about Nuneaton. It's been an exciting experience of mixed feelings. A new reality to explore, where the new is constantly mixed up with the old. But the most interesting fact of all is that the new things to discover are indeed, the most of the times, coming from the past. Like that old, tall tower not far from the town centre, that looked to me like a sort of ancient castle. I still don't know what is it, but I'm sure it has a much more interesting story to tell than all these chain shops that I already know so well. They are telling me the story of the contemporary world we are living in, but nothing about the story of Nuneaton. Globalization, you know. The big blender of all the cultures, where peculiarity and tradition are the only bonds left from a body that is constantly changing and mutating. Even the Nuneaton's body looks like it changes so much, with a new skin made of people from all around the world. I saw in particular a lot of Punjabi and Indian people around, with their very popular off-license shops selling any sort of stuff, anywhere and anytime. I am part of that process as well. Italians and Italis are everywhere nowadays. We are in your language when you're talking about panini or spaghetti. We are in your stereotypes when you think about sun, warm, happy smiles and good food. And we are indeed in so many restaurants, like that one that I saw during my exploration of Nuneaton, 5-minute walking from the beautiful St. Mary's Abbey. It's called Amore Mio, my love in Italian. Well, talking about Italian restaurants, we don't have such globalized plates like a pasta with chicken or pizza with bacon and so many grammar mistakes in our menus. But anyway, when I saw the sign with the beautiful Italian flag, and I could smell that smell of fresh, tasty food, I felt for one moment like I was at home. But home is not just made by our memories, but it's also our present and the reality that we choose to be part of. My story now is the story of Nuneaton, where many people from all around the world are coming indeed, looking for a place to call home. Walking through the Riversley Park, the marketplace, or the lovely Newdigate Square, I can see what Nuneaton means to you, but I'm sure it will be soon for me as well. A community, a beautiful reality that I want to be part of.